Mm-hmm.
Can you help me work through that and explain to me why it's
Sure
important
can.
for us to go out in droves and actually hit the election offices to do that?
Sure, I can. I'll be succinct and then we can go into detail if you want to. Of
Absolutely.
course, we know the mayor is the executive branch of the government. So it's the mayor that, in fact, proposes what he thinks the budget, also known as the financial plan, should be for New York City. So the budget year starts July 1st and goes through June 30th of the following year. So the mayor will say, listen, this is the money that we've taken in, and these are the things that we're going to need to do for the upcoming year. And I think that this is how we should spend the money, and that money is going to total 98.6 billion with a B dollars for New York City.
Mm-hmm.
So it's his job to propose how we're going to spend the 98.6 billion dollars. It's the mayor's job to make sure that there are city agencies to provide the services that we need: fire, police, higher education, all of those service agencies. That's his responsibility. And he appoints deputy mayors to run those. You know, he can't do all of that. So he appoints the deputy mayors to run those city agencies. And it's the mayor's job to relate to state and federal regulations and interactions. And it's the mayor's job to control the education of the public school children, of all children in the city of New York. The mayor, unfortunately, in my opinion, has what's called mayoral control of education. When you were growing up, Sakai, we had community boards and the opportunity for the parents of the children in the city to express and to vote on what they wanted to see occur. And that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
With mayoral control for education, there is no vote per se of parents or community people to determine what happens for their education's children, for their children's education, excuse me. It's the mayor who has the full accountability and responsibility and power to decide that. No other municipality in the United States has taken away the power of parents to vote and exercise their voice in their children's education.
I have a question,
So
Mrs.
that's the,
Barron, if you can
yeah.
hear me. Sorry to interrupt. Is that a part of the No Child Left Behind bill, or is this something completely different?
No, this is something completely different. This is something that Bloomberg
Ugh.
fought for and got. This is what Bloomberg went to the state and asked for and was given. So that he now had that power to control what was going to be implemented in the school systems, what kind of contracts were going to be given out. Now, remember,
Mm.
Bloomberg was a billionaire who didn't need the money. So if he didn't need the money, why did he want to be governor, mayor?
Mm-hmm.
I believe he wanted to be mayor because it gave him the ability to offer contracts to his billionaire buddies,
Mm-hmm.
to have those
Absolutely.
kind of relationships for them that gave them access to city contracts.
Yes, and
Why
that's
else
what
would you want
started
to
the
be?
whole gentrification, the buildings,
Exactly,
all of that came from Bloomberg. Mm-hmm.
exactly. So he used that
Ooh, Chile.
for his own financial gain. So yeah, he was able to give that up to someone else for the 8 years, the 12 years rather, that he was there,
Mm-hmm.
because he knew he was planting seeds and he would recoup billions for the money that he did not collect, the $200,000 that he didn't get for those each of those 12 years. So of course he could take a dollar salary
Yeah, and it
because he
shows
was
the
planting seeds.
educational disparities between the different districts and the different schools in different areas. You can see them
Exactly,
plain as day.
exactly,
And a lot of the
right.
money that comes into schools comes not from the school budget themselves, but it comes from the PTA and the PTO. So if you have families that are more affluent than others, they can
Hmm.
raise hundreds and thousands of dollars for the PTO or the
Yep, they can
PTA,
raise it.
and they can
Hmm.
give it to the schools, and they can fund schools differently. So that's when you have certain schools that are in certain neighborhoods, they don't have as much.
Precisely.
It's because of that. And
Exactly.
I never understood what happened, but that makes complete and total sense. But
Yeah,
I was a kid when
that's what.
Bloomberg was mayor,
Mm.
so.
And in addition to that, we need to realize that the state also had very disequal, disequitable unequitable funding for the schools in New York City.
Yes.
That's why they had that campaign that they waged for fiscal equity. So for 20 years,
Mm.
the state was underfunding Black schools
Yep.
in New York City for 20 years.
Yep.
So there was a case brought, and the courts found, oh yeah, you haven't been doing right by New York City Black schools, and you have to fix that and give them what they need. And for another 8 years, the city didn't do it. So only this year, not the city, the state, I'm sorry. It's only this year now that the state budget is passing the funds to New York City that the courts said they should have had 12 years ago. It's
Funny.
horrible.
That's
It's
crazy.
horrible.
Funny thing
Yeah,
is,
but
we are
uh-huh.
getting a raise. Well, I'm an educator, just point that out
Okay.
there. But I just got word recently that they were redoing the budget for my school, and they're like, oh yeah, teachers might get a significant raise next year because we redid the budget. And I wonder if that court case has something to do with it. Like, where did this
Oh,
extra money
the
come from?
raise, if there is a raise coming, it'll be through negotiations with a contract.
No, I'm not in.
Unless,
I'm in charter. I'm not in the.
oh, you're in a
Yeah,
charter
I'm in
school.
charter. It's
Okay,
different.
so
Yeah.
that's different. And no, that's a horse of another color, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the charter schools do not report to the to the chancellor. The
No.
charter schools are their own. They take city money
Mm-hmm.
for their private schools, and it's private because if you don't have to report to me and respond to me and account to me,
It is
you're doing
private.
your own thing.
Yeah.
You're doing your own thing. Yeah.
Now,
And so I'm going to run through the others,
mhm.
Sakai, if you want me to.
Yes,
The
ma'am.
public advocate, he is like the watchdog. He's supposed to make sure that the public programs and public issues are addressed. And the public advocate can introduce legislation for consideration in the city council, but he can't vote on it. And the public advocate can file lawsuits against city agencies. To talk about the comptroller. The comptroller is the finance piece of the city. So the comptroller is going to vet and sign and approve city contracts. The comptroller is supposed to oversee the budget, make sure that everything is being spent appropriately. And the comptroller has the ability to invest the city's pension funds, which amount to $250 billion.
Wow.
So the comptroller has that responsibility.
There's so
And if
much
you make,
money on the table in this city.
yes, $250 billion that he has the ability to decide where he's going to invest that money. And the comptroller also is the one who will settle the claims that come against the city. So if you bring a claim against NYPD and you're successful, it's the comptroller's office who makes sure that that payment goes out. And of course, we have the borough presidents and the city council members. Borough presidents really don't have a lot of power. Borough presidents can issue advisory opinions on land use proposals. They can advocate for funding. They don't have the ability to get the funds, but they can come to the city council and ask the city council to increase their budget. They do appoint members to the various community boards that are in their district. And they do have a budget from which they can make capital allocations for basically infrastructure or projects that are clamoring to try to get a small new building constructed and things of that nature. But much of what borough presidents do is non-binding. It's they can make comments and advisory, but they don't have a lot of power. But then you come to the city council, and the city council is the legislative body, and it's the city council. It's only city council members, along with public advocate, that can introduce legislation, make proposals for laws. Even the mayor can't submit a request for a bill to be considered for law. He would have to find a council member to have any legislation introduced that he would want to be considered and to become law. So the main purpose of the city council members are to introduce legislation and approve legislation that will become laws. It's to approve the budget for the city that the mayor proposes. So in other words, the mayor says, listen, this is how I want to spend the $98 billion. But it's the city council that says, okay, we'll approve it, but you want this here, we want to move this here, we want to put this there, we want to shift this there. So the city council is the one that fine tunes where that money is going to be placed in each of the agencies or initiatives. So that's a lot of power. It's a lot of power. And then the other main function of the city council is to decide how land is going to be used, and if it's city land, to decide what kinds of development will go on to city land. So, for example, if there's land that exists and it's been zoned to be commercial, it's up to the city council to either keep it commercial or change it to
To
something else.
residential.
So the city council will say, well, no, you can't build housing here because this is an industrial zone and that's the zoning restriction and that's what you have to abide by. And for city land, we talk about gentrification, we talked about that a little earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if there's a plot of land in my district and it's owned by the city, or if the developer wants to get city subsidies to build on that land, that developer has to come before the council member. Oh, Madam Council Member, Mr. Council Member, here's what I'd like to do. It's going to be a beautiful building. It's going to do here the plans. You say, oh, that's fine. So what is the income levels that you're proposing for the people who will live in this project that you're proposing? Oh, as long as they're making $130,000, that'll be okay. As a council member, I can say, oh, no, 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 no. I'm not supporting that project because my community doesn't have that kind of annual income. My community's annual income is $40,000. So why would I approve a project coming into my district where the people who live here can't afford to move into it? That's gentrification. When a council member approves a project coming into their district that does not meet the income levels of the people who presently live there. Now, we know there's a range. Everybody in the district is not making $40,000.
Mm-hmm.
Some are making less, and a few are making more. So when you allow projects to come in that aren't approximate to what the existing income bands are, you're making a case for displacement of the people who live there. So if a project comes in and it's requiring 50% of the income for people coming into that be at $100,000, that's 50% that my community can't meet. And somebody else is going to come in and begin to populate that. And then it becomes a ripple effect. Oh, you see the block, you see the building down the block, they're charging $5,000 a month for rent. I'm going to up my rent. So it expands and
Mm-hmm.
ripples. And that's how gentrification goes in.
I have a question that pertains to that. I'm sorry, Trom. Is that why a lot of the neighborhoods in your district, particularly, that they are not fully gentrified in a way that they were probably like these big projects and these big buildings
That
were being
you got it.
blocked?
You got it, my sister. You got it.
Yeah.
That's exactly why. In my district,
Yeah.
there has been an increase in the numbers of people who are low income or extremely low income moving in. There's not been an increase in my district of those who are coming in because they can meet the income requirement of $100,000. Because if it comes past me, and again, not everything comes past the council member.
Right.
So, but if it comes past me, I'm not supporting it. I'm
Absolutely.
not supporting it. If I, as the local representative, don't support the project, generally, my colleagues will follow my lead. My colleagues are not going to support a project that I say to them, listen, I'm not supporting this project because it's out of the range of the people who are living there. I'm not supporting it because whatever. My colleagues generally are not going to go contrary to what my position is. So when you see these developments coming in and you check out what the income level is for people to qualify for
Mm-hmm.
those apartments, and it's not matching what the community income level is, that's a matter of gentrification.
It
That's
is.
bringing in another income band that's displacing the people who've lived through the hard times, the people who didn't have this, didn't have that, weren't having the garbage picked up, and now it's been an uptick in services, but now they won't get to benefit from that. So that's a disservice. I don't think it's representative of maintaining what it is that people are entitled to in terms of improvements coming into their district, and it's displacing a lot of people. So when you hear somebody say, "Oh, East New York had a rezoning plan," well, that's the other part of East New York. It's not the 42nd Council District that I represent. That's
Right.
not my district. The council member of that district, which was the 37th District of East New York, that council member approved that project. That's why that part of East New York is being upzoned and rents are going up and people who've lived there for years are being displaced.
So, Ms. Barron, I have a question for you.
Yes.
I'm a firm believer in reparations for Black folks, right? So,
Yay! My husband just had his bill passed on that issue. I hope that you know that.
did he
I'll talk
really?
to you about it.
I did not
Yes,
know that.
yes,
Awesome. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, tell us about it.
I love
Yeah. So
these.
I want to ask my question, and then I want you to please tell us about that.
Okay.
My question is, obviously reparations has been proposed on a federal level with Joe Biden. We're pressuring him for that.
Yes.
What, if anything, can our local politicians do for local reparations, like a city council person, a
I'm so
mayor?
glad you asked that question. People are going to think that we rehearsed. I'm so glad you asked that question. And the answer for the city is that city council members can support a resolution that I have introduced. It's Resolution 1039. And Resolution 1039 says that we should support the state legislation, which was introduced by my husband. And that state legislation calls for a commission to be established in New York State to examine the reparations remedies that should be considered for by the state. So the beauty of that bill, which passed in the assembly on I think it was last Wednesday or Thursday, the beauty of that bill is that it constitutes a state commission that has six members from the community, six members from December 12th movement that's been around since forever and fighting for reparations. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
two members from the December 12th movement, two members for NCOBRA, which is a national organization that's been fighting for reparations, and two members from the Institute of the Black World. So those are six members from the community. The remaining members, totaling five, would be one from the governor, two from the Assembly representatives, and two appointed by the Senate. So the beauty is that we will now have, well, it's passed out of the Assembly. It has yet to get passed out of the Senate. And from there, it must go to the governor for signature. So the beauty of this is that this commission will determine what remedies should be offered, how much should be offered, and what form it should take. So it jumps very past, are they entitled to reparation? No, 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 no. This bill says they should define or identify remedies for reparations, what they should be, who would be entitled to it, and how much it should be. So that's the bill, and we're asking people to call their state senators to put some pressure on their state senators to vote that bill out, and that then we will have to put pressure on the governor to sign it. Now, if we just talk to each other, that's fine and good because we need to educate one another. But if we don't put the pressure on, not much is going to happen.
Right.
I believe that the reason the governor last year declared Juneteenth to be a holiday was because of the people in the streets. And he said as much. After he declared Juneteenth a holiday, he said, okay, so now you all can go back into your home. I said, I don't believe he literally said that out of his mouth. I heard him when he said that. But it was only a result of the pressure that was brought to bear by the hundreds and thousands of people in the streets, not just in New York, not just in the United States, but literally across the world. And it's going to take that same kind of pressure to bring to bear for him to realize that, hey, this is something I had better sign to approve this commission being established to achieve its task.
I'm glad you mentioned that because we have a lot of listeners from all over the world, all over the country. Is this the bill that you're mentioning? Is this something that you think can be duplicated all over in everybody's individual communities?
Most certainly, I'm going to try to rustle around here and find out what the Senate bill number is. But it's called the reparations bill in New York State legislature. And I'm going to get the number for you. And certainly, things don't exist in a
Can we Google
vacuum.
that?
They don't exist. Yes. The Senate bill for the reparations remedy is 7215. So
Okay.
Senate Bill 7215. And the S stands for Senate, and the bill number is 7215. And call your senator. Tell your senator you want them to vote to pass Senate Bill 7215. And as I started to say, things don't exist in a vacuum. This is not just one thing unto itself. And there are other municipalities that are looking at reparations, making offers of that. California is looking at it, Chicago, North Carolina, and the main difference is that theirs don't have community people on those commissions. It's important that we, as the people who were the subjects of the suffering and the torture, that we have a say in what we want to see, not the benevolent, overseer, the benevolent enslaver making the decisions as what they think for us would be in our best interest. So
Preach.
this bill is significant in that it has a majority of community representation on the commission.
Well, that was a very key moment that you spoke on just now. I didn't even think that we would get that.
Right. A lot of people didn't. A lot of people didn't. But we're
Seven
there.
two one
And it's
five.
so significant. Yeah. We had a press conference on the event last, I think it was Thursday or Friday, last Thursday. And we had it downtown Lower Manhattan at the so-called African Burial Ground, which is down at Federal
Mm-hmm.
Plaza. And it was so significant that it was held there because, the remains of 400 of our ancestors were discovered during the time that they were making, during the foundations for the building that presently exists there.
Mm-hmm.
And the bones that they uncovered, first of all, they were intact after these hundreds of years. So it was as if our ancestors were saying, listen, we're going to stay here and we're going to be the testimony to what was done for us, the deformity of the bones, the compression that they saw in the neck bones, the broken bones, that they were all a testimony to how hard our ancestors were worked. People may not know we're talking about reparations in New York because New York City and New York State was the largest slave holding state in the North. People may not have learned that in their history books, and that's deliberate and that's intentional. Yes, we had Africans who were enslaved in New York. The Africans that were enslaved were, in fact, built Wall Street. They built a wall. They were auctioned at the pier down on the Lower East Side, and they were sold there, and they were used as workers for the Dutch East India Company. And our history tells us that they were enslaved, but our history tells us that they resisted. They didn't take this, with skinning and grinning and
Mm-hmm.
dancing. No, there were several deadly rebellions in New York City where Africans rose up and said, oh, heck no, we're not doing this. We're not taking this. We're not going to be just subjected to this and not give our resistance and voice our uh, opposition to this. So people don't know about that either because they may not know about the enslavement period.
Yep.
But yes, we had it. It was almost as if our ancestors were saying, "Okay, good, good. Uh, our living and our dying was not in vain, and we're entitled to this." And when I talk about reparations, I'm not talking about. putting a little more money in each of these little pots that currently exist. Reparation, that increase that people see in some, and I mean, I'm not putting down anybody's reparations offers. Everybody has their own ideas, but we're talking about 400 years of uncompensated labor that brought this country to the level of grandeur that it has. So if I was starting a business and if I didn't have to pay for the land, which they stole from the Native Americans, or pay any labor costs, which they stole from our ancestors, I'd be great too, because I
Yep.
wouldn't have any costs. I wouldn't have any labor costs, and I wouldn't have any construction costs. So our uncompensated labor is what moved this country to where it is now. And that has not been compensated. Other people have been compensated. The Japanese were compensated for the years that they were interned
Speak
during the
on it.
World War, and other groups as well. So we are entitled, and this reparations remedy committee will come up with the forms of reparation that we think should be considered.
Now, I have one last question,
Yes.
and you may have answered it already.
Okay.
And I said to myself, "Yo, I'm gonna be unbiased, and I want to be fair to everybody. This is my aunt.
Yes.
My uncle is running
Yes.
for her seat. This is my aunt Inez's last year in city
That's
council,
right.
and her husband is running for her seat, and he should be celebrated, and she should be celebrated.
Absolutely.
But I want to do one thing before I go.
Yeah. Uh
That
huh.
that is selfish, and fuck it, Aunt Inez. Sorry,
Yes.
Yo,
I
you're
heard
making
that.
me
That's right.
cringe.
Yes.
sorry. Well, I'm emotional right now
I
because
know you
I
are.
really
I know
don't
you are,
like the
Sakaki.
idea
You're
of
honest. You're
slavery.
authentic, and you're
It
original. That's what you are.
I am.
Yes.
What should they do for election day? Just
Oh,
when it
good.
comes to this reparations matter, when it comes to something that matters to us as a people, what should my people do?
My advice is to study the candidates that are running. All of these things are intertwined. Study the candidates who are running, and it may take a little bit of an effort. Um, so there are people running for various positions. What have been their positions before this election cycle? What have they
Yep.
said? What have they done?
Which one
What can
should they
you
look
point
forward
to?
to? Which one should they look into? I'm being selfish. Which ones do you think they could find an answer to somebody that may have been working for the police or somebody that is what should, no, let's
Well, I'll
listen.
tell you one way. I'll tell you one thing. Look at who's endorsing them. That's one way to look at it.
Hello. That is
If you
that is
find
it.
that somebody has been endorsed by the PBA and been endorsed by the sergeants and the whatever, whatever, and endorsed by this one and that one, that's because those endorsers think that that candidate
Is gonna do
is going
something for
to
them.
represent what their issues are. Okay? So
Speak on
that's
it.
a great indicator if you're looking at that. Now, and also when you're looking at council members, which of the council members that voted, that opposed having police officers having to disclose, being subjected to being sanctioned and being fined? Would you believe there are people, I'm not going to give no names, I'm not giving any names. Check out the count. Check and see who it was that did not think that police officers should be subjected to being fined. Teachers are, the union will cover them oftentimes, but they're not immune. They're not immune. But there are
Well,
people who voted that they should not lose that immunity. So
don't worry about it. You don't have to say it. I'll do it. I'll do the research and I'll put it out there on my social media
Right.
to find out the answers to these questions.
But look at the people, and who are the ones whose districts have now had these large influxes of displacement and large numbers. Okay, that may not be where they're moving now, but if they were a council member and they had significant, there may be some districts where the gentrification was minimal or whatever, but where there has been a large displacement, if that was a council member's district and that council member may be moving to or seeking to move to another office, That may be that they have real estate backing them. I mean, big real estate. Talking about the big boys, the revenue kind of people, the Real Estate Board of New York. It may be that the revenue board thinks that, oh, this person has allowed us to have these kinds of projects, and if they move up, we can expect that that will continue. So where's the money coming from? Is it coming from the little people in the community who give in their $20, $50, $100, or whatever? Or is it coming from those larger bodies of people who have their own economic interests that is motivating them to endorse a particular candidate?
Oh man, this was amazing.
Okay.
You are amazing.
And I think you are too, for you to have launched out and have this. I was talking with Jelani. He said, "Oh, no, Ma, Sakai is big."
Oh,
I said,
Jelani.
"Oh, okay."
I'm actually going out to LA and staying in Uncle E's
wonderful.
place this weekend. So
Very
that's
good.
what I'll be
Good,
doing.
good, good.
I love you. I will call you later. I appreciate
Okay.
you
Thank
so
you
much.
I
so
love
much.
And it was nice talking with you and your co-host, and to your listening audience. I'm so glad that you're listening to these kinds of programs that stimulate. In the back in the '60s, we had a phrase: "How you going to make the Black nation rise? You got to agitate, educate, and organize."
Oh, come
And that's what
on.
we have to do, huh?
I said, come on. I like that.
That's right. That's right. That was one of our slogans: agitate, educate, and organize. Yeah.
There it is.
We appreciate you.
Title of the show.
Inez Barron. That is the title of the show.
Somebody write that down.
That is the title of this week's show. Inez
Great.
Barron, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Her
Thank
husband
you.
is
Love
Charles Barron, and he's running for her office, and they stand
Thank
on
you
the
so
same
much.
things.
Yep.
Later.
You. Love you. Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.